And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, we're burning $1 million a month right now. That's a problem. And I didn't necessarily realize it. Other people also helped us realize that this organization is seriously sick. And if we don't take drastic action, this organization's not going to exist next month.
Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of the My Biggest Marketing Mistake podcast, the podcast where we transform costly failures into priceless insights. I'm your host, Kacy Maxwell, and I can't tell you how excited I am to bring this podcast to you. Listen, if you're responsible for making marketing decisions in your organization, whether you're running campaigns or leading a team or shaping the strategy, you're going to want to stick around for these stories because honestly, each story features a challenge that is common to every business out there. Now, I've been in marketing for over 17 years, and I've been in a lot of different areas of marketing. I've been on the agency side, on the client side. I've been in B2B, B2C, e-commerce. I wouldn't say I've done it all, but I've done a lot. And right now, I'm the CMO at Provisions Group, a consulting company in Franklin, Tennessee. Now, we do things a little different here, right? We offer both IT and marketing services. Why? Because the overlap between marketing and technology has never been greater. I mean, you honestly can't do marketing anymore without technology. And so we're able to offer an experience that most consultants can't. We look at the problem end to end, both marketing and technology. And so I lead the internal marketing team as well as our marketing services division where we offer marketing help to clients. Now, in the 17 years that I've been doing marketing, there is one thing that has become crystal clear to me, and that is marketing is more of an art than it is a science. And for every success, there's a trail of failures right behind it. And that's why I'm so excited to bring these stories to you. Each week, I sit down with a CEO and we unpack one of their greatest failures. That's right. We are focusing on failure, an entire podcast on failure. Why? Well, Warren Buffett once said, it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. And I've come to realize that while listening to success stories gets you all excited and you're like, I'm going to go do that for my business, they end up becoming unhelpful because of your unique situation. But the interesting thing about failure stories is there are nuggets of why those failures happen that you can pluck out and apply to almost any business out there. And so I love talking to CEOs about marketing as well. And the reason is they give a different perspective on the role of marketing in an organization, right? They give this bird's eye view. And so they're ultimately responsible for every piece of marketing that goes out of their organization. Right? And they're always looking for how do I connect marketing solutions to business problems? And honestly, if you're making marketing decisions, you're going to want to know the way that CEOs think because that relationship between marketing and the CEO is absolutely essential. Now, I am thrilled to kick off this podcast with our first guest. So Aaron Witt. Aaron is the founder and CEO of BuildWitt, a Nashville-based company that's on a mission to build up the next generation of heavy civil and construction talent. They offer workforce solutions, software, creative services, industry events, and Aaron, their founder, is everywhere. He's speaking at events. He's got a podcast. He's all over LinkedIn. This guy is great, and you're going to want to hear his story because he is honest and vulnerable and has a lot of insights that you're going to learn from. So the episode today is going to focus on, like I said, something common to every business, and it is how do I scale a marketing strategy, right? What works beautifully when it's smaller sometimes can fall apart when it gets bigger. And then when you add more cooks in the kitchen, there's a lot of misunderstandings that can happen, especially if you get disconnected from your customer. So we're going to talk about things like what even is marketing strategy? How do I leverage social media? And a lot more. I promise you, you are going to get a lot of value from this conversation. And we're going to hear it right after this.
You want to grow, and you need a marketing partner to help accelerate the process. At Provisions Group, we take a comprehensive approach to marketing and technology to maximize impact and growth. We work alongside you to build and implement a customized marketing plan, and we help you optimize your tech stack so you can operate efficiently and securely. Plus, our tenured fractional advisors are here to partner with you to keep your objectives aligned and create a roadmap to success.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Aaron. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and have a conversation with me. I think the story that we're going to talk through today has a ton of commonality with most businesses out there. They want to scale. They're trying to figure out how to do marketing and what is the right fit for their business. And so I think anyone who is leading marketing in their organization is really going to benefit from the lessons that you've learned. And so I appreciate you taking the time to share it today.
I am always delighted to share our missteps, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, that's great, because that's actually where I want to start, because I've talked to a bunch of CEOs, ask a bunch of people in the C-suite to join me on this podcast, and I usually get one of three responses, right? The first one is like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to need to think if I have any of those to share. The second one is like, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to, but man, I'm covered up for the next 3 years. Right, they're too busy. And then the third one is kind of what you shared. Is you're like, oh, that's an awesome idea. I would love to do that. I need to think of which one I want to share. And so, you being so willing to talk about failures, like how have you gotten so comfortable with talking about those things?
I watch out for the people in the first category. Those are the people, they haven't made mistakes. I'm like, I'm going to steer clear of this guy. Because they obviously have, but they're just not willing to share them. This is something I have not struggled with because I'm young. And I think being young in business is always typically presented as an obstacle to overcome. And it has been in many ways because I'm very ignorant and naive. But being ignorant and naive also has its benefits. And so I'm the first person to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm by no means the expert. And that's just part of the process. And that admitting where I've fallen short helps me get better and better. And it helps others, like you said. And it's why in a lot of ways we're here, because we've been transparent. One of our values is transparency wins. It's been baked into the company since day one. And once you start being transparent and open, it's such a more natural way of doing business and relating to people and building relationships. So now that I've been doing it for so long, I don't ever want to go back because it's just way more fun to be this way.
Well, so let's dig in. So before we get into kind of like what was the problem you were trying to solve, and then kind of how it went wrong, why don't you just kind of just give a little set the scene?
Yeah, brief background. Kid grew up loving bulldozers. Dad was a tax lawyer, had no exposure to bulldozers, but a big construction project popped up in my neighborhood when I was thinking about what the heck to do with my life as a 17-year-old senior of high school. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, so I called the owner of the company, asked for a job, and was thrust into the world of construction at 18, right after I finished high school. Once I found construction, I was like, hey, this is my cup of tea. I am going to run as far as I can in this direction. And I wanted to be a construction business owner. So I talked to the only construction business owner I ever knew, Rich Pearson, the guy that owned the first company I worked for, and asked him his advice. And he said, go to work for a bunch of construction companies and figure out what you like. So that's exactly what I did. I got an engineering degree, graduate, go into work in road construction. And when I do, I start sharing some pictures, videos, stories on social media, on Instagram under the BuildWitt name, with no intention other than to build my personal brand for the sake of employment opportunities within the construction industry. But it took off. There wasn't a lot of high quality storytelling in the construction industry at the time. So after 8 months post-graduation, quit my job, my good paying job, moved back in with my parents and start a media company focused on the dirt world. And the dirt world is critical infrastructure, natural resources. So it's roads, bridges, pipelines, landfills, power plants. It's like the underbelly of society. You flush your toilet, you flip the switch on your wall, you drive somewhere. That's the dirt world. The dirt world has a problem, and that is workforce development. So the industry has about half its workforce retiring within the decade. And, I don't know about you, but to me, power is not a nice to have, it's a need to have. Water is not a nice to have, it's a need to have. Roads, not a nice to have, it's a need to have. So we have to figure out how to build that infrastructure. We need those people to do it. So that was the problem the business was solving for initially was, hey, let's go tell stories about the industry. If we want the next generation to come in, we need to first educate them on what the heck is going on here. Then from there, the business grew to a marketing agency. And we were doing websites, branding, video projects, everything marketing specifically for the dirt world for the sake of primarily workforce development. Then about 3 years into business, we ask ourselves if we're really building a business to attack this workforce challenge, we need something more scalable. And marketing is great, but best case scenario, we can work with 50 companies. We need to be working with 5,000 companies plus. We need to be working with all the companies in the industry to really make a difference here. What's the way to do that? And the way to do that was software. So at that point, we might have had maybe 30, 40 full-time people. We had just raised some capital, some investment to then go be a software company. And that was, I believe, end of 2021. We said, hey, we're going to do this creative work. We're going to do this marketing work, but we're also going to be a software company.
So you started as one type of company. You begin to pivot, right? You're like, hey, we need to change for where we want to go, which is happens in business every day sometimes. And so you make this decision to shift. And with that, did you say, now we need a new type of marketing strategy? What was the marketing strategy that you had in place when you were a marketing agency? And did you shift that whenever you moved into becoming a software company?
Yeah, the marketing strategy for the first few years of business, there wasn't a marketing strategy. The marketing strategy was social media, was our podcast, was what we did online. And we didn't need to market ourselves because we were generating so much reach with the social media and the brand presence we had online that we had it was entirely inbound. So we never did outbound research or outbound outreach as far as marketing is concerned when it came to getting work on the creative side. And we still have this creative business. We just needed to add an additional business, do something else on top of the creative work. So I, first few years built the business on my social following, and that was still moving along, but we were getting into a totally different game, which was software. So we needed to build a marketing team. We needed to build an outbound and a new inbound strategy, and we needed to build a marketing strategy was what we thought we had to do. And that's what we began doing. Because we had that investment, we were able to then go build a marketing team for the first time on our small, short business history. And we started to build a significant team. We hired a leader, and we might have peaked at like between 8 to 10 people in our marketing department within about 6 months. And saying that just makes my stomach hurt to even think about. But we built this enormous machine to hopefully get our software out into the world.
I love how you say you didn't have a marketing strategy, which is true, right? You didn't have one that was necessarily intentional, right? The interesting thing that we deal with a lot here is people come in here and they're like, "Hey, I want to start marketing." Right? I want to start doing some marketing and get out there. But the funny thing is, whether they've had the hires in place in their organization or not, they already have a marketing strategy, right? One by default, not design, and they're already doing marketing. And so the interesting thing, and I would love to know what happened with that team, because you had a strategy that was driving the business. It was driving an inbound set of leads to you, right? And your organization was growing enough to have the capital to invest. So something was going right there. What was the strategy shift of saying, hey, we need to put a strategy in place? Kind of walk me through how that new strategy was developed and kind of how it kind of changed the way that you marketed yourself.
I think the mistake was we made a marketing strategy. I'm anti-marketing strategy. When someone comes to me and says, we need a marketing strategy, I'm just like, this conversation's over. Or what's your marketing strategy? I don't know. I've never had a marketing strategy. Our business is doing just fine. I reach tens of millions of people online every week. I've never had a strategy. My strategy has just been tell a great story, add value. That's it. And if it goes more complicated than that, we're starting to go off where we should be going. And I say that in jest. I understand the value of strategy, so on and so forth. But I think in the marketing world, there's a lot of people, all they can do is strategize. They can't actually execute because they can't do quality storytelling and generate quality content and quality leads. Then they just become strategists. And it's like, I don't mean to dismiss that whole world, but a lot of it's complete nonsense based on what I've seen. And I think that's what we fell victim to in a way. Like, because we were becoming a software company, we needed a software marketing strategy. So we went over to the box of software tricks and found the little puzzle piece that said software marketing strategy. And we grabbed it and we threw it into our business and spent a boatload of money on it. And looking back on it, it's not anybody within that team. It was nobody's fault, but mine first and foremost. I was at the time, like I am right now, chief executive officer of the company. It all rolls up to me. I should have known better. But going back to where we were in the beginning of the podcast, I didn't know any better. I had never worked at a software company like this before. I had never started a software company. We're in Tennessee. I'm not in Silicon Valley. I can't go talk to others that are doing this. Like we were pretty isolated, which I'm now very grateful for, because I think it would have pulled us in different directions that we shouldn't be in today. But it allowed us to go down a path that was just very unproductive. And once the horse was out of the barn, the horse was out of the barn. Once you hire a bunch of people to do marketing, you've brought all those people on, and now they have to do stuff. And so the strategy was go basically produce all of this content and build this monster website and this monster knowledge base and really dial in our SEO and do all of these things that at face value seem legit and seem great and did some stuff, but didn't really leverage what we were best at and how we got to the position we were in the first place, which was in hindsight quite foolish.
I love your analogy of going into the box and pulling out that this is a software company strategy.
Yeah,
I get your frustration with strategists. I do as a marketing strategist myself. I'm not fully offended because I completely understand the reason you don't like that. And so many times, this is the thing that so bugs me about marketers in general. Marketers really, really get upset and complain about non-marketers not understanding marketing. All the time, they're like, "Man, you don't understand. That might not work for us. That might da." But then when they are the ones that are going and creating the strategy for a business, they go look in the box. What did some marketing thought leader say is the best thing to do? And I'm going to do that, right? Because that person said email was dead, or that person said text messaging is the new thing, or we've got to do live events that look exactly like this. And I think marketers quickly go, oh, that's right for everybody, right? And I think there's a key thing, and I love the way that you talked about that, is that they missed what was actually in your wheelhouse, like what was actually driving your business. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that because you already had a content engine, right? Before you created this marketing team, you had a content engine. Now, that content engine was you, but they created a new content engine, which created something. And I think there's a disconnect there between authentic content and produced content, because I think some and I think once you take the human out of it, like you were sharing stuff that you were learning, you were sharing stuff that you liked, that you were seeing, that you were really interested in. That passion was kind of like woven into the content that you were putting out there, right? And then you hire a bunch of people, and those people like having a job, right? And maybe they care enough about construction and kind of get the concept. And so then they get the structure, but they're missing that heart. They're missing the piece, the excitement, and the I don't know, the humanity of that content. And I'd love to know, did you see that? Did you see just the content that came out of both? It was just off, even if it's 10, 20%.
It was off, but I'm a very trusting person. And again, at that point, I was 25, 26 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I just assumed that's what you did. And it was odd because I was like, I need to get patted on the head. Like, all right, you go run along now, Aaron, like you go play in your sandbox and the adults are going to be over here doing the real work. And in a way, I kind of bought into that because I just thought like, yeah, okay, fine. I'm just going to go to my sandbox. Screw you guys. I like my sandbox. You guys go do the real work and we'll go build a software company as a result. I get a little, worked up with the strategy side of things because it's all about like the tricks and, we need to do the SEO. It's like, well, I don't know. Again, I've never considered SEO with anything I've ever done. And I've generated billions and billions and billions and billions of views across every platform out there very consistently, not a one-hit wonder, because I've focused on great content and on value and on. And so I think what we were doing was we were creating quantity. But what I was doing was more effective because it was more true to the industry, true to our customer, true to us as a business, true to me as a founder. And if we had stayed in that vein, I think we would be in a better place. But I don't want to be too harsh on what we've done because it's helped us get back to where we were. And I'm happy that we learned the lesson when we were small, because now looking back on it, was that a very expensive mistake? And am I proud of it? Absolutely not. Tons of shame. But it was a much smaller mistake than doing it 5 years from now as a much bigger software company. So I'm grateful it happened when it did.
Yeah. One key hallmark of this that I would love to just really call out is the proximity to your customer and what they like. You were early on going to work in the construction industry. You were there day after day around all of this, right? Absorbing it, hearing people talk. And you weren't necessarily doing research, right? Like you were just working and you were excited about it. And content flows out of that, just flows out of knowing what your customer wants and being close in proximity to them. When you start introducing these teams, these marketing teams that all they do is stay in a box in their office and talk back and forth with other people that are not your customer about what your customer wants, you start getting further and further away just because you just don't know them. Like, what do you think they know? Well, I've got this persona. I've got a persona that I've written on here with 17 points, and now I know them. And so there's something about how do we continue to get that proximity to the customer so that our content can be authentic. I know you said we kind of figured it out over time. Was there a moment where you're like, this is wrong, we've got to go back? Was it a slow progression? Like, how long did it take you to get to that realization? You're like, we've made a mistake, we need to shift.
Walk into the kitchen, our office, our CFO at the time, Aaron, he's in the kitchen, and we were raising money for a second time. It was a second round because we were burning money. So we needed money to keep the business going. And it was a rolling close. So we were basically getting money in and spending it as we went for a year and a half. And I asked Aaron, hey, Aaron, if I get a $1 million investment, how much time does that get us right now? And he looks up at the ceiling, looks back down at me. He's like, about 4 weeks. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, we're burning $1 million a month right now. That's a problem. And I didn't necessarily realize it. Other people also helped us realize that this organization is seriously sick. And if we don't take drastic action, this organization's not going to exist next month. And so that began, it forced our hand, and marketing was a part of that. We had the only time we've laid people off a few years ago, which was just terrible. But that was the beginning of a long, probably 18 to 24 month slog to get back on track. And it's taken that long to correct from that error.
So after that, where do you go with marketing? Right? You didn't have marketing. You brought in marketing. It didn't go the direction that you wanted. You had to scale back. Do you have a marketing team today? Like, what is your strategy, and how has what happened during that time informed the way that you think of marketing at your company?
It's just been a progressive process. I think there's a fallacy in business that is, you're just struck by lightning in these key moments, and then it all makes sense. Oh, that was the moment where it all came together for us. And then from then on, it's just been peaches and cream. We had that problem, but then we're kind of doing the same thing on a smaller scale for maybe a year. And then I think we've taken a hammer to marketing overall within our business multiple times now. And it wasn't until maybe 6 months ago where we started to get our hands around it. And also, there's just been other fires. And so it's like, yeah, there's fires everywhere, but I'm going to go focus on the most important. Like, I'm going to have to run by this marketing fire right now to go get to that much more important fire. Because if that fire goes, the whole place goes. And marketing, yeah, it is a problem, but it's a problem for tomorrow, not for today. Once we got out of that, we were able to focus a little bit more on marketing. Dan Briscoe, who's helped me build the company, he's been a huge help. We then have brought in Chase, who's led our creative business for a while, into marketing to then just get us back on track, to get us back to where we were to begin with, like I said. And so that's been now maybe the past 4 to 6 months, really getting back on track, understanding what that means, and then understanding what the sales team needs, what our software needs from a growth perspective into next year. Like, there's still more things to consider right now than just let's get back to where we were, because that's unreasonable as well. Where we were is not where we are today. But it's been a big effort over the past 6 months. So we've rebuilt our website from scratch. We've completely redone all of our messaging. We're still working through that as we go. Like, we're basically building from the ground up right now, which I think is a lot of fun, and I'm happy we're doing it. But it's still gonna be a long time, I think, before it all has really come together and we're in that place we should be.
So, thinking about the big failure we talked about, the big mistake, what would be, if you could summarize a learning that you got from that? Like what's the takeaway for somebody in a similar position, right? We know that every marketing situation, every business is going to be different. So this is not going to work for everybody. But what's a takeaway that you have from this that someone could think through?
If I had to summarize it, I think we would have been much better off really asking ourselves, what do we have that everybody else doesn't? What's our superpower? And how do we lean into that? And maybe how do we do some of the stuff we need to do from a software standpoint, but how do we really leverage what's most valuable about what we've already done? Why are we here? Why are we here? How did we build this brand to begin with? And if we would have just asked those questions and leaned into that and run with that like we're doing right now, I think we'd be in an even better place.
Aaron, thank you so much for, one, taking the time to record this, and two, just leaning into that openness and honesty. I mean, we're all going to make mistakes, and I appreciate you sharing this because I think, again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, someone's going to listen to this and they're going to hear just that takeaway that you just said, and they're going to make a better decision moving forward. So thanks for that. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to the My Biggest Marketing Mistake podcast. We hope you got a lot of valuable insights that you can apply to your business today. And we're not done. We've got a lot more great stories of failure coming your way. So be sure to follow us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, or check us out on YouTube. And be sure to leave us a rating and review because it helps a lot. Now, here's what's coming up on our next episode.
There was no analysis on the front end. It was just like, podcasts are too limiting. We've got to do something bigger. And I didn't really critically consider all of the ways that this could have gone wrong. And boy, did we feel it over the next couple of years.